For a few years, starting back in 2018, my spark for photography was fizzling out fast. I wasn't getting out with my camera much, and the photos that I was taking, I wasn't very happy with either. So in today's video, I thought I'd share some of the biggest changes that I made to skyrocket my photography forward from that, and hopefully give anyone out there that needs it a bit of inspiration as well. I'd be willing to bet that most photographers, most aspiring photographers, give up on photography when they find themselves in the position that I did. Not going out much with a camera, not happy with new photos, overthinking it too much, and not just getting out and going out with your camera and seeing what happens. Finding yourself in a position where you're like, actually photography is really quite hard and I'm kind of struggling at it, but I do want to get better and progress with it, is possibly one of the best places you can find yourself at, because you're then graduating from, like I say, learning the basics of camera settings, learning basic photography composition guidelines. And from there on out, you can really start to dial in and focus in on your direction with photography. Firstly, I stopped fighting with bad photos in post. Everybody takes bad photos to go along with their good ones, and that's absolutely fine. But fighting with the bad ones in post-production to try and kind of force something out of those bad photos, to have something to show for that day if it didn't go all that to plan, or whatever it may be on the day that resulted in those photos being less than ideal, almost always resulted in me quitting Lightroom and feeling very defeated with photography. Which of course meant if there were some good photos amongst those bad ones, they just ended up getting left as well. For me, the first 5 to 10 minutes you spend editing a photo, probably even the first minute, is the biggest indicator of whether you actually succeeded out in the field taking photographs. And if you find yourself battling against it in post, there's a high chance that something wasn't right on the day, the conditions, the way you shot it, or maybe the photo's just not for you in general. So in a rage one day, I think it was shortly before New Year ticked over, probably like 2020 or something like that, I went through Lightroom and I just got rid of everything that I felt I was either battling against or was not worth my time. And nowadays when I take a photo and I start editing it, if I do find myself fighting against that raw file in post and not quite getting it where I want it, and you know, if I'm kind of like, yeah, I don't think that photo's for me, I either straight up get rid of it, get it gone out of the headspace, or just keep it around for a reference image and don't worry about it. Just mark it off as done, because it's probably not worth your time. Well, this is one of the subjects I came to check out today. The remains of an old smelting mill. Hundreds of years ago, this area was a big complex for this smelting mill, and this is what remains of it. You can see in the floor, I think, around the corner, the foundations of where the bigger buildings were. There's a little picture over there that I'll show on the screen of what it kind of looked like all those years ago. But I feel like this is going to be quite a difficult subject to get a good photo of, because of the amount of trees around that are kind of in not pleasing places. But I'm going to go ahead and work my way around it. Let's see if we can get a photo or two, maybe a detail shot. This might be my favourite angle of the front, because I want you to be able to see this grassy entrance. But I'm going to have to try and get on my tiptoes to get it so these foreground bushes here aren't like overlapping the stonework. So kind of about here, and then tilt myself up and lift the camera up as well. Actually, I can do it without my tippy toes. So about here. Also, the sky in the background being so white is nice, because I think if it was kind of stormy and cloudy, it would be like too similar to the brickwork in colour tones, if that makes sense. With it being white, it gives us such a big contrast. And then the greens on the floor as well are being lit up really nicely. Not by like beautiful light by any means, but more just like luminance, allowing them to pop a bit. So I took a fair few different shots from different angles, but I think maybe here, and really punching in and just not letting anything up for choice, just the archway is just the main subject, the complete main subject. Having a little bit of those trees in the sky to cover up some of that white space. And then this water down here, just leading into the archway nicely. Punched right in at about 35 on this lens. And just letting those archways and the brickwork really fill up the whole frame. I have as well got the quarter strength black mist filter on the front of the lens, so that's going to help with some diffusion with the sky being so white above us. So this is kind of the shot I was talking about with the path and the gate. We've still got some nice brown leaves on the floor down here as well. Problem is, I don't know if the gate kind of takes away the mysteriousness and the, should we say, untouched feeling. It adds like a humans have been here element, which of course they have because it was a smelting mill, but makes it maybe less secretive, maybe about here, so the gate doesn't impede on any of the brickwork as well. Nice brown tree on the left hand side as well. So this little tilt from holding the camera straight looking at the archways means that still a lot of that white sky's in the top of the frame. If I just lift the camera a bit and tilt down, it means we cut out some of that white sky, but then I can change the perspective in post to make it straight again. The next change I made that by far had the biggest impact on my photography, which is funny because it's by far the one that takes the least amount of effort, but it was I stopped waiting for photo holidays or trips abroad to be excited about photography or just go and do photography in general. This was a terrible habit I got myself into after visiting the Isle of Skye for the first time in 2018. After that particular trip, I felt like everywhere was underwhelming and I was on constant pursuit of upping that trip or just going to places that were just as incredible, despite already living in one of the most beautiful areas of the country. As soon as I stopped waiting around for trips abroad and really started appreciating the beauty of my local area is exactly when my photography started to take leaps and bounds forward, and I got out every single week and really made a conscious effort to take photos wherever I was. So if you find yourself just kind of sitting around waiting for the perfect opportunity or the perfect photo holiday, then get out of that mindset. Just get out and go, just take your camera, and remember that the best photographs, often the best photographs that you take, are in places that you least expected and on days that you least expected to get great photos. So just go and do it. Just go shoot. Just get your camera and go and shoot. Is that right? Tell him then. Tell him. Second subject I had planned for today, up this road here, is severely flooded, so can't get access to it. But the next thing I did to power through and change up my photography was becoming a bit of a history nerd. Now, I never liked history as a kid in school because school systems made it impeccably boring, but if you tie history to a creative project like photography, you're talking a win-win. History kind of goes hand in hand with photography anyway, because the act of taking photos is literally preserving history. But as soon as I started to dive into little niche bits of history about my area or anything that I was photographing really, not only did it make me appreciate the photographs that I was taking way more, but it also opened so many doors to so many more photo opportunities that are out there. For example, you stumble across an old ruined building out in the countryside, you photograph it, but you're not sure what it is. So you come back, you research it, and before you know it, you're down a rabbit hole of these other ruined buildings in the area that are dotted about, and they're all linked together. Much like those archways that I shot this morning, they actually link to other ruins that I've shot that are quite far away, but they were joined together in history. Mines that were in the North Pennines would drag iron ore up there to that smelting mill, and it links those two subjects together. And all of a sudden, you become really engaged in these photographs, and sitting at your desk and researching all these places turns into less of a boring task and more into something that feels like a little bit of a detective case. Now, obviously it is really nice as well to just head out with your camera without any meaning and just take photos for the sake of it. And those kind of days can also get you great photos, of course. You can get great photos for any reason, anywhere, at any time. But if you are feeling bored and stagnant, then I think diving into particular niche bits of history is one of the best ways you can sort of build up that motivation to actually go and photograph these places. And like I say, you're going to have a bit more of a richer meaning or legacy behind the images when you've built them up, and maybe telling a bit more of a story with these images that the history is tied to. Anyway, I'm going to go see if I can find this last subject, because today so far has not gone to plan. Okay, last subject for the day is this old barn over here that sits by the side of the water, but I'm going to have to shoot it from this bridge and quickly because there's a lot of cars coming over here. Another one. Good boy. All right, let's run. Go, go, go. Well, slight logistical nightmare there on those last few shots. I was under the impression there'd be enough room on the pavement on that bridge to stand and happily compose a photo while holding loop in as well and safe away from the cars and stuff, but I'd had to run on and off of that bridge about 45 times. So, you know, I got a shot, but I didn't have time to consider it or frame it properly or anything. So, one for autumn, I think, next year. I'm going to stick that in the autumn route for next year. So to wrap up this video, I just wanted to say, and I think I've probably stressed this throughout my video and maybe even in every video I've ever made, but the very last thing, I'm not going to spend too much time yapping on about this, that I did to really push my photography forward and out of that, shall we call it, rut, was just consistently every couple of weeks, every week, switching up what I was shooting. And that goes without saying. It's going to keep it fresh. It's going to keep it new. And obviously, if you are shooting the same type of images or the same place back to back and it's not feeling stale and you're not feeling the motivation slipping, then continue that until you do and then switch it up. I like to go to the extremes from, say, shooting at the coast to then in the city to then little villages. And you don't even have to go that extreme. You could be doing normal coastal photos and then long exposure coastal photos and then maybe some coastal town photos. You don't have to go too crazy, but it just keeps it fresh, and it really is really going to help take your photography forward. And the more times you switch it up, the more times or the more clear idea you're going to get of where you want to take your photography. And speaking of switching up what you're shooting, check out this video next to have a little insight into how I pretty much have something new to photograph each week. Thank you for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.